Well, before we kick off this episode, I got to tell you, Nature Bee have come up with something dangerous. Their new Power Bee Bite Bars. Chocolate caramel or peanut honey choc chip. They taste so good, you're going to forget they're healthy. Packed with protein, boosted with power pollen, they're perfect for the road, perfect for the shed, perfect for the man cave, perfect anytime you need a quick lift. And they're paired beautifully with your daily power pollen capsules to create the ultimate wellness routine. Links are in the description right now, but stick around, I'll tell you more. Coming up, Rod Hannafy and Truckie Tuesday.
Got your diesel running, head out on the highway, missing all the roadkill. Another Truckie Tuesday. Indicate when you're changing from lanes. Do not brake check me in my prime. Australia moves and it's thanks to you guys. Trucks to get there on time. Listen to the air horns. Dip your lights from high beam. HPL that help you. Thanks to Rock and a Food. On the highway driving all day. And at night when the traffic's slow. Getting goods from state across lines. We're ready to go. Without trucks, Australia stops. They're driving around the clock. Never, never giving up. Drive safe tonight. Drive left-hand side.
Time for Truckie Tuesday. Where are you today?
Oh, mate, now I'm in Melbourne.
Fascinating.
Mate, I've just arrived in Melbourne. Something that many people might not know now is that one of the people that control the wool have this great big computer-controlled warehouse with robot forklifts. And whilst you wouldn't think wool was the ideal thing to move around with forklifts, because, of course, it's soft and bulgy and generally a little bit awkward, reasonably heavy. All the bales go in there and they sort them and resell them, and it's quite a step forward from our point of view, I suppose. The unloading was pretty quick, and it's very interesting to look at the robots working around. You don't sort of imagine them working with bales of wool.
I know, that is fascinating. It's all automated. So there's less urgency for you to go home and have a bath.
Well, we still have to secure them and all that, and they're lifted off by forklift. But once the forklift takes them, they put them on a conveyor belt and then the robots take over.
Now, Rod, before we get too far into this, you've got something you want to say about parking etiquette. There was a post put up of a driver pulling the curtains round and going to bed at a fuel bowser in Dubbo. What's the story?
There's always two sides to a story. There's a possibility that he fueled up or he pulled up there and broke down and couldn't move the truck and he was waiting for a mechanic. That's a possibility. But it's been an issue for some places and sometimes. I've even had blokes pull straight into a fuel bowser, get in, go to the shop, go to the toilet, buy a meal, come back out and then drive off, not even buying fuel, simply because they were too damn lazy to find a park or to put the truck out of the way of someone else. So the one in Dubbo, the post was put up, has he just fueled and gone to bed? Mate, there was ample room in the street behind him. He would have had to do a blocky to get round into the street because there's no room out the front. But are people that inconsiderate? Now, the other part of it is I spoke of actually delivering cotton in Brisbane a couple of weeks ago. The first bloke didn't move up to the front of the bay. The second bloke left a 5 metre gap, left me with my arse hanging out, tried to get run over. And the other day going into Brisbane, mate, I pulled into a green reflector bay and you come up onto it. You can't actually see till you're sort of nearly there. And there's a bloke and he's parked right dead set in the middle. So with him dead set in the middle, I nearly ended up with my arse out on the road, but I was already in there. I couldn't sort of go up behind him. Now, there may well have been a truck in front of him when he pulled in there, but I managed to back out, go round in front, and there was room for two of us. So does it take that much to think about somebody else? You know, all we're asking is that when you pull into a bay, think now somebody else might turn up. If I move up a bit, well, then he's going to have an easier go of it, or you might help somebody else get off the road and get a decent break. If you're going to pull into a servo, don't use the fuel aisles just to go and get a drink, get out of the way. And, of course, don't pull up and go to bed after you're fueled up.
Yeah. I guess the motto is just as Jesus once said, do unto others as you'd have them do unto you. If everyone did that, we'd be right.
We certainly would, mate. We'd be better off. I'm just going to turn the truck. I had it idling down, so give me 1 second to do that.
Oh, no, this is reality. This is reality.
That's right. Yes,
This is life on the road. Down. This is life on the road. Some truckie news, thanks to Big Rig. A truck driver's been charged in relation to a multi-vehicle crash. This happened last month on Mount Ousley in New South Wales. Rod, what can you tell us about it?
Mate, I saw the footage of it. It looked pretty horrific. From what I saw, it was an empty, so unladen, small rigid. We're not talking about someone going down there with a fully loaded A-double or something like that. I don't know what happened. You would find it hard to imagine that a vehicle like that, with ample braking capacity for when it was loaded, managed to burn its brakes out, run out of brakes at the bottom. That seems a little bit unlikely, but funnier things have happened. There may have been a mechanical failure. But then, of course, he went on for, another kilometre or something like after that before he stopped. And everybody else that was involved, there were some injuries. And all it was that it is a steep descent. And I was actually speaking with Adam from NTI. He's doing some videos about these steep descents. And the signs are there, Luke. And actually that one, Mount Ousley, there's plenty of signs to tell you it's a steep descent, be in low gear. Anybody that drives trucks know that unlike a car, unless you're in a race car and you boil your brake fluid or something, heat is an enemy of brakes. And if you ride your brakes by coming off the top of the hill and you're on the brakes all the way to the bottom, well, they can overheat and fail. If you keep applying them, push, because we have air brakes, you can run out of air. Normally, though, that brings the maxis on, but if they're too hot, they don't work. So until they do a proper investigation, whether there was a mechanical failure, any driver knows that if the sign says steep descent, use low gear, now technically under the law, Luke, if you touch the brakes more than 3 times in one of those descents, they can pull you up and fine you for not, incorrect manner of operation, something like that I think they use. But yes, they don't drive trucks.
Weren't you pulled up near Mount Victoria and you challenged it?
Yes. I was coming down Mount Vic. I was in a 19-metre B-double fuel tanker.
How's that for a memory?
Good memory, yes. And they actually pulled me into the little parking bay where the narrow convict bridge is on the corner, and the bloke got out. He said, you used your brakes. I said, yep, that's right. And he said, we were behind you. I said, yeah, no, I saw you. I knew you were there. Oh, well, you used them too many times. And I said, well, and what I'd done, Luke, the week before, I'd gone down there in a lower, slower gear without having to touch the brakes at all. But I had 3 cars come around me at the very last second trying to cut me off. One nearly hit a car coming the other way because he's trying to push in front of me. And I said, your way created a bigger problem. I believe my way is safer. He said, oh, but you touched the brakes. I said, can you smell them? He said, what's that got to do with it? I said, can you smell the brakes? No. I said, well, if you can't smell them, they're not hot and I haven't overused them and they're still cold and allow me to stop safely. Oh, well, don't do it again. Yeah. So, yes. Yeah, they don't understand some of those things.
Yeah, maybe better education for the Highway Patrol. But there you are.
Yes.
Obey the signs, get your truck in low gear because it's the safer thing to do. Interesting, this accident that we're talking about at Mount Ousley, it happened in the morning. It happened at 11:40 a.m. Plenty of visibility, I'd have thought. It can get foggy. Yes. It can get very foggy.
But no rain or no anything like that, so that's all good. No mitigating circumstances in that regard that we can see. But as I say, there could have been a mechanical failure. And when they do the investigation, that's one of the things to raise, Luke. Like in this situation, we've seen the result. We've seen what happened. Now, everybody saw it on Facebook and it was terrible and those people involved were injured. That's terrible too. But we will probably never hear what really happened. Many years ago when I drove tankers, We're pulling out of a mobile terminal, and they used to put out cassettes. So this is how long ago it was. And they were called Tanker Torque, Torque. But I can still remember listening to those cassettes, and they were an accident investigation. And not that Luke was an idiot or Rod did something stupid or that Bill was, operating illegally and broke something or hurt somebody. It was an accident investigation, and one of them was the bloke was standing inside of a large tank, turned round to put his foot out behind him, and there was nothing there, and he fell 12 metres and became a quadriplegic.
Wow.
It went through that. There was another one where the driver was travelling along the highway, and in a bonneted truck, the bonnet actually flipped up in front of him while he was driving.
Jesus.
So he couldn't see and ended up in a dam. So, of course, they went back to what was the maintenance, what happened with the hinges, all of those things. And, for example, I don't want to know that driver was an idiot, but if there is something out of that accident investigation that could help other drivers, one, think about what they might do in that situation to remember back to that. Two, there might have been a particular thing that happened or that contributed to that accident that we will never know about. And if they make that information available without castigating the bloke, because we don't want that to happen, we don't want, bloody vigilantes after him at home. But if they put that information out, it becomes education, and you may well save somebody else's life, save another incident, because somebody heard what happened, had the truth, and then acted on it in the future. And here's another example, mate. I was travelling down to Hume the other day. There was a pretty serious accident there near Wallen. Now, one truck ran into the back of the other, and as I'm travelling around the detour out through the village of Glenrowan, the helpers there were really good. There was a bloke on the UHF. Yeah, mate, when you come over this bridge, just go down to the corner, turn left, go through the village. It's pretty congested. Take it easy. Oh, thanks for that, mate. All good. But then, of course, there was, it was a fatality. No, it was a double fatality. No, it wasn't. Yes, it was. I know what happened. Well, unless you were there, I don't think you really do. So, again, if that information in the future came out that incident was caused by this, and it might be that somebody didn't look or didn't see or did something, but you don't want his name, you don't want his address. You just want to think next time you're in that situation yourself, I remember that, and maybe I should back off a little bit or leave a bit more room, whatever it might be.
I'd like to hear from drivers. Have you ever had an unforeseen accident? What happened? Did your bonnet flip up? Did something happen that caused an accident? How was it resolved? Let us know. Tell us your story. LukeBonerRadioGuy@gmail.com. There's a really good editorial in Big Rig magazine, and I have discussed it with you, but I just want to bring it to our listeners' attention. And the headline is Closing the Knowledge Gap in Trucking. The editorial reads, I was trying to think what has changed the most in the industry, not concerning the most noticeable, like equipment and technology. But in my 55 years in the business, and one skill, or lack thereof, is the general knowledge gap among trucking industry participants. As we've moved away from drivers and some owner-operators doing any work except driving and sometimes loading and unloading, many do not have the basic general knowledge to describe what has happened. This is really important when you break down, for example. Back in your day, back in the days,
ancient history.
Back in the days of black and white trucking,
Yep.
Truck drivers knew how to do everything. They were probably mechanics, or they knew how to fix something. They knew how to change a tire. They knew how to describe what was wrong with the truck, but they also knew exactly where they were. We didn't have the communication that we did today. You had radios. You didn't have mobile phones. But I'm tipping that the author of this article from Big Rig is saying that very few truck drivers today, because everything is so automated, trucks are automatic, that very few truck drivers can actually change a tire. And while maybe they shouldn't have to, he goes on to say it is a good skill to have. So what the author of this article is saying is, are truck drivers today underskilled?
Yes, but there are levels and degrees. So, yes, in the past, if you go back to the very early days, blokes would change hubs and diffs and axles, and even I remember, I think I told you a story about a mate changing a radiator on the side of the road, and he was having a real bugger of the day the first day, and a lady turned up the next day and offered him sandwiches, said he'd seen him on the side of the road, give him a hand. His company wasn't real impressed, but he got it done. Now, you can't always do that now. The biggest problem we have at the moment, Luke, is that if you break down on the side of a freeway currently, anybody that you would normally ring in the past and say, well, I'm broken down, can you come and have a look? Is the truck safe? Oh, well, it's on the side of the freeway. No, well, sorry, we won't touch that. We might get run into. You'll have to pay to get it towed, to get it fixed. And that's the biggest change at that end. On the other end, if you have some mechanical knowledge, and we've spoken where a lot of people in the past, your kids came into the industry, but a lot of their dads said, well, you've got to get a trade first at least. I don't care what you decide to do, what you would like to do, but I want you to have a trade in case you go into trucking, find it's not for you, and then you've got nothing to fall back on and you've left school and it's all done and dusted. And many of those do mechanical trades, some for diesel, some for trucks. So if they go and buy a truck, they have all that knowledge later on. They've got the ability to fix those things instead of paying someone to do it. But now, sometimes, and I've even had this discussion with their own workshop manager, bloke will ring up and say, the truck's broken. Yeah, what's wrong with it? It's broken.
Yeah, don't know.
What do you mean it's broken? Yeah, that's it. They haven't got a clue. They don't know whether the battery's out. And I've got to say, mate, we did have one bloke. Now, the trucks have bells and whistles. We've discussed them, how they go off. They go off if the engine is overheating. They go off if the water is low. Unfortunately, one of our drivers kept driving. All the lights were going off saying, you must stop, stop the engine, stop. And when he didn't, what happened? Seized the engine. So $30,000 bill because instead of stopping, and look, you can't just park in the middle of the freeway and put the hazards on. He could have got on the shoulder. He had a number of options. And again, you go back, you'll see people driving along the road that have a problem and they have an obvious problem. There's one thing to say, well, I can't stop here, but normally you can get to a shoulder and you can pull up and you can at least get out and have a look. And that's one of the things that wire rope that now runs virtually from Albury to Melbourne on the Hume Highway is prevented because there's not a shoulder for you to pull up and inspect those things. So, yes, drivers need some knowledge. They don't need to be fully qualified mechanics. It's another argument that many of the people that pull us up on the side of the road and defect us for something because they don't understand a lot of other things, they're not fully qualified either, and do they have the knowledge that they need? And you go back to it, mate, I was listening to another podcast earlier on, waiting for you, and this bloke said he hit a pothole. Now, when he hit the pothole, he heard an unusual noise, but everything seemed okay. And he said he actually looked in the mirror, and the bloke behind him went straight into the pothole as well, didn't try to avoid it. Now, he had a wide load on. He could not avoid it, but that's another thing. So many people just drive straight into the potholes now and wonder why things break. But he hit another pothole and the steering wheel moved in his hand. He thought, this is seriously wrong. I've got to pull up here. And he did, and they'd actually completely broken a front spring.
Wow.
Now, if he hadn't sort of recognised that that's not right, that shouldn't do that, I need to pull up and check this, and he'd gone down the road and something had severely bloody come apart and he'd ploughed into another truck, well, then it's too late. And sometimes you can be lucky and be in the right place. Sometimes you can be unlucky and be in the wrong place, and you can't teach that skill. And that's where we started talking about the difference between advanced driving and defensive driving.
Yeah, which is taking me to our next topic, exactly that. And I would love it if my daughter did a defensive driving course because she just drives too close to the car in front. She doesn't look. She's obsessed with the technology on her dashboard and her phone and who's calling and what song's playing. It worries me that if she was on a trip, maybe on a wet road, because you don't learn this when you get your driving lessons. Driving instructors teach you how to pass a test. It's only experience. I'll give you an example. I have to merge in traffic when I cross the Sydney Harbour Bridge a lot, and it's 2 lanes here, 1 lane then another 2 lanes. And the other day, I was about to merge into the right lane to get onto the bridge and not go through the tunnel. And I could see that the car in front of me to my right, I could see their head turning to the left. Bang, looking over the shoulder. There was no indicator on, but I could tell by their body language that they were attempting to change lanes. I then thought, hang on, I could be in this driver's blind spot. I'll just pull up a bit so that he can see me, and because I know he's about to change lanes. Now, it's very hard to teach that, Rod, isn't it?
It certainly is, and unless you've been in that situation where the bloke then tries to move over onto the top of you, you think, well, geez, why did he do that? Obviously, he didn't see you, and it's worse in the trucks, of course, with the blind spots. That's something we don't teach people about, so they don't recognise the fact. We've spoken about the sticker on the back that says if you can't see the driver, he can't see you, but of course it's all about the mirrors with B doubles. And it's one thing to say to someone, I'm going to send you to an advanced driver training course. Now, the difference that I see is that advanced is virtually skid control, and people, they did a big study in the States at one stage, and they reckon that race car drivers had more tickets and more infringements and more accidents on the road because, of course, on the circuit, you're all going the one way and hopefully trying to get there. There's still accidents on circuits. We know about that. But when we did our licence, as you say, I'm disgusted that we really teach people the absolute minimum to pass the test. We don't teach them how to survive for the next 50 years. And I believe there should be a defensive driving part of that because, as you say, you learn by experience. There is an argument that if you go to an advanced driving course, you're virtually just going to be going faster when you hit something because you think you've got the skills. But the biggest single thing, and back in the days of Finnemore's Tankers, we were all sent to a place called DECA, Driver Education Centres of Australia. You did a week's course there. But then we did a thing called Smith's Driver Training. And it teaches you to look not at the car in front of you, but the car 5 in front of you. And you have to go with another driver and you do virtually a verbal discussion. So as you drive along, you can say, look, I can see that car 3 up on the left on the side. He's just touched his brake light. So he might be going to pull out, or he might have just got there and he's going to swing the door open. Or I see that light in front of me is green and it's virtually stale. It's been green so I anticipate it might change and the car in front of me might lock everything up and stop. And if I'm too close, as we've discussed, then you're going to run into the back of them. So I don't think it's too much to ask. I think there is real value in it, and I think that we could save lives, but it's another thing you would have to include in the licensing process. And at the moment, they've done very little to change or improve that from where I sit.
I once, years ago, asked Peter Brock what he thought of advanced driving courses, and he said to me, well, hang on, are you talking about a defensive driving course or an advanced driving course? And I said, what's the difference? A defensive driving course, as you just correctly put it, focuses on preventing accidents through hazard perception. And that involves risk assessment, reaction techniques, looking ahead, troubleshooting. But an advanced driving course it goes beyond that, and it teaches high-speed vehicle control, emergency recovery, proficiency, and driving under more extreme conditions. And often those courses take place on a track. So there is a difference between an advanced driving course and a defensive driving course. I wonder if every driver should do a defensive driving course.
I believe they should. Luke, many years ago when I was young and a bit lead-footed with me Tirana, I ended up with a number of points and I had an option, either lose my licence for a couple of weeks or go and do a defensive driving course. I had to pay for it. Might have been $150 or something for a couple of nights. Honestly, I think that's probably the best money I ever spent on my car in one way. And yet, unless you get into that position, you don't see it. The gentleman who lent me his truck, Ken Wilkie, at the start of the Truck Right program, he put all of the grade 12 children in his kids' class through Mount Cotton driver training facility. Now, we've spoken about the difference. I'm pretty sure that defensive is not always included in advanced, and advanced is not the other way around, of course, with defensive. But for something that gives you knowledge, I don't think it's too much to ask, and I think it would change the way in a few years, much as I'll still say, education about sharing the road with trucks would be really valuable. I think even the idea of having defensive driver training, you said hazard perception. I'm sure there is a hazard perception test, but I don't think it goes far enough, and I don't think it gives people the skills they need to protect themselves.
Do you remember my first producer at Triple M, Jess?
Certainly do.
Yeah, well, she was with me for 5 years, and the whole 5 years she was with me, she didn't get a driver's license. I think she failed 2 or 3 times. I think 3 of her inspectors quit the business. But she was on her L's. I don't think she ever got a P's. Well, the 5 years she was with me. But her auntie, for a birthday present when she got her L's, gave her a defensive driving course. And I forget how much it was. It was $250, I think. It may have changed by now. But is a defensive driving course worth it? If you teach them or if you've done one, please let us know. Rod, do you have a question for the week or a lesson for the week?
So for this week's question, Luke, we're speaking about defensive driver training. We're speaking about tips and things like that. I want to know the best tip that you've ever been given, whether it was your mum and dad. At one stage in the past, we spoke about those ads that TAC did where they had the father in the front, the kid in the back, and it was like a marionette. And the fact that virtually from the time your kids get in the car with you, and of course at 5 they're not going to be driving for a while, but they watch everything you do. And unfortunately, some parents teach them the wrong thing. So, do you need driving lessons? Do you need that on top of your parents teaching you? But what is the one single best thing that anyone told you before you started driving, that when you started driving you've gone back to and thought, Jesus, that was good advice?
Can I give you my dad's? My dad taught me.
Absolutely.
My dad taught me to drive, and then I failed my test twice. So he said, let's get you a professional lesson. And the professional guy, he just took me on the route that they take you on, and he taught me tricks that my dad didn't know about. For example, they'll time how many times you check your rear vision mirror. Driving a manual, they want you to put your hand back to the steering wheel between each gear change. Now, who does that? You always leave your left hand on the gear stick, but no, they would
ready to change again. Yeah,
but that was one of the things they checked on. But there was something that my dad taught me that he worked out for himself because he nearly had a terrible accident with a cyclist. He taught me that when I pull over and I'm about to get out on the road, so I'm parallel parked on a busy road outside the shops, right? Dad said to me, son, here's a tip that I've worked out. Open the driver's door with your left hand because then your body is already turned and you're looking at the lane. Yep. And I do it every time now. Dad went to open the door with his right arm, throw the door open, and nearly had a cyclist run into his door. And so he taught me, open the driver's door from the driver's seat with your left hand so your body's already turning and you're already looking back. I thought that was great advice. And I thought initially you were going to say he told you to look in the mirror, and it depends on how the mirror's set, whether you see that. That too. Can't exactly do that in a truck, but I'm saying there are times, Luke, when I've gone to get out of the truck onto the freeway, and had I not looked, you think, I've pulled up, I've got to get out, and you just sort of swing the door open. And yes, there are times when there have been vehicles that close. So the advice is good, and the way it was delivered works perfectly in a car, but the intent works for every vehicle. Yeah, sure. Now, of course, check your mirrors, of course. But he said, look, just open the door with your left hand. Look at you. You're already looking back. But I'm sure you've seen people who have never looked in their mirrors, Luke, and just swung the door open anyway. So we need to cover both aspects. We do indeed. Right, Hannafy, always good to talk to you. I hope the Kenworth gets you from Melbourne to wherever it is you have to go. I'd love to learn more about the automated wool storage facility. Can we take a photo or a video? Mate, I think I'd have a kitten if I got a camera out there. But next time I'm there, I will ask. And I must say, Luke, as a parting point, one driver called me up the other day, said, doing a good job on the podcast. When are you going to get Luke in that truck? Look, I'll do that before I taste the hot chili, which is another topic altogether. All right, mate, all good. Rod Hannafy, Rocket Rod Hannafy. Safe travelling to all. Well, thank you so much for your company on episode 51. Aaron Patterson, there'll be a lot of talk and a lot of feedback over that. Was the sentence sufficient or not enough? And please feel free to comment on any of what we talk about here because we want to hear your opinions. So send us an email, get onto our Facebook and leave a voice message.
And just before we go, Luke, I saw this on the TikTok and I wanted to ask you, what do you think this number plate spells out? Ready? X, Q, S, M, W, A.
X, Q, S, M.
W, A.
I've got no idea. X, Q, S. Moi. Kiss me.
Excusez-moi?
Ah.
What's the best
Folks.
number plate you've seen?
Oh, Jesus. We did a whole show on this and some bloody beauties came up. Some of them are banned now.
Well, maybe let's see what the listeners say.
Let's see what the listeners say. The best number plate you've ever seen. What was it? And I wonder, did it get banned? Thank you for listening. Episode 52 coming up very, very soon. Thought for the day: behind every great podcaster, there is a producer rolling her eyes.
I will agree with that.
All right, you know me. I am definitely not one for rabbit food, but these new Power Bee Bite Bars from Nature Bee, they are the real deal. Crunchy chocolate caramel, peanut, honey, choc chip, proper flavors, real flavors. And here's the kicker. Each one's got 5 grams of protein plus Nature Bee's famous power pollen to give you that natural lift. And they're just $14.95 a box. Perfect when you're on the go, between meals or need a pick-me-up on the road. It's a snack that actually fuels you, not just fills you. I chuck one in with my Power Pollen capsules in the morning, and I'm sorted for the day. You can grab a 6-month supply of Power Pollen for just $160, and they'll throw in an extra month and 2 bars of their famous pollen and honey soap for free. So if you want to level up your wellness routine, grab a box of Power Bee Bite Bars with your next order of Power Pollen. The links are in the description right now.